The gymnasium was alive with excitement as the families gathered for the class of 2024 graduation ceremony at Fort Campbell. The walls were decorated with vibrant red and gold banners, each one reading 2024 in large bold letters, a testament to the milestone that was about to unfold. The overhead lights bathed the room in a soft glow, highlighting the eager faces of proud parents, siblings, and friends who filled the bleachers. Children ran through the aisles, their laughter echoing throughout the room, while others wandered to find their seats. The air buzzed with the collective energy of families coming together to celebrate the accomplishments of their loved ones. As the event neared, the sound of cameras snapping pictures filled the room as people eagerly awaited the ceremony to begin. This was more than just a graduation. It was a celebration of hard work, dedication, and perseverance. For some, this day marked the culmination of years of effort, the result of late nights studying, early mornings in training, and sacrifices made by both graduates and their families. Amidst this festive atmosphere, one individual stood out from the crowd. Major Diana Fortress Johnson, dressed in her pristine dress blue uniform, walked through the main entrance of the gymnasium with quiet confidence. At 38, Diana had a presence that commanded respect. She wasn't just another attendee. Her bearing and demeanor spoke of years of service, discipline, and leadership. Her uniform was impeccably sharp. The blue fabric gleamed under the lights, every crease perfectly pressed, every medal and ribbon arranged with precision. The silver oak leaves on her collar reflected the light, catching the eyes of those around her. Diana's ribbons told a story, one that not many would understand at first glance. They symbolized the sacrifices she had made, the challenges she had faced, and the distinction she had earned over the course of 15 years of military service. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly according to military regulations, not a strand out of place. It was a reflection of the professionalism that defined her every day. The uniform fit her like a second skin, tailored to not only meet military standards, but to accommodate her feminine frame. Every detail of her appearance spoke of years of dedication and commitment to the military, to her comrades, and to her country. Diana's journey had been one filled with challenges. 3 tours overseas, countless missions, and the emotional weight of being away from her loved ones for extended periods. She had given so much of herself to her service, and it had shaped her into the woman she was today. She had made sacrifices that not many could understand, but today was different. Today wasn't about the uniform or the medals. It was about being there for her son, Michael. He was graduating today, and nothing was going to stop her from being here. She paused at the entrance, her eyes scanning the gymnasium for an available seat. It was important to her that she be there, not just as a mother, but as someone who had given everything for the country, her country, and now she was here to celebrate Michael's accomplishments. The pride she felt for him was indescribable. Despite all the moments she had missed in his life, his first words, his first steps, his birthday parties, she had made it a priority to be present for this one. Her son was following in her footsteps, joining the military, and that meant the world to her. After scanning the room, Diana found an empty seat in the middle of the bleachers. It wasn't perfect, but it gave her a clear view of the stage. This was the seat where she would see Michael walk across that stage and receive his certificate. This was where she would watch the culmination of all his hard work and sacrifices. The thought of it brought a smile to her face, and she moved toward the seat, careful not to make a scene as she navigated through the crowd. As she made her way to her seat, Diana noticed a few curious glances. Some people smiled respectfully when they noticed her uniform. offering small nods of acknowledgement. Others, however, seemed to be confused. Their eyes lingered on her ribbons and medals, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and disbelief. There was a clear sense of wonder in the air, as if they were trying to figure out who she was and why she was there. Diana was used to the stares, but today it didn't matter. She had earned every ribbon, every medal, and every symbol of rank. No one would take that from her, not even with their doubtful looks. She reached her seat, placing her small purse beside her and adjusting her uniform jacket. As she settled in, she could feel the energy around her begin to shift. The excitement and anticipation were palpable, but there was a certain discomfort in the air. People were starting to whisper, exchanging looks of confusion, and wondering what a woman in full military uniform was doing at a graduation ceremony. To them, it seemed out of place. To her, it was simply part of the journey. A journey that had led her to this moment with her son. Diana closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to relax and take in the sounds of the gym. The rustle of programs being handed out, the excited chatter, and the laughter of families who had gathered to celebrate together. It was the kind of noise that made her feel connected to the world around her. This was where she belonged, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a deep sense of peace. Her son was about to graduate. Michael was stepping into the same world she had, and she couldn't be prouder. She had always wanted him to make his own way, to follow his passions, but to see him follow her path was a gift. It was a dream come true. The ceremony was set to begin in about 30 minutes, and Diana's thoughts turned toward the future. She had made countless sacrifices for her country, for her family, and now it was time to witness the result of all that effort. Her son Michael was ready to take on the world, but in the midst of her thoughts, Diana was interrupted by a sudden shift in the crowd's energy. Her calm focus was broken as she noticed two security guards moving through the crowd. They were dressed in dark uniforms with badges on their chests, and their eyes were scanning the faces of the families. At first, Diana thought nothing of it. It was a graduation ceremony, after all, and security was just a part of the process. But as they got closer, something about the way they moved, the way they held themselves, made Diana pause. One of the guards, a heavy-set man in his 50s, was named Chuck Morrison. He had a weathered face, a face that had seen its fair share of difficult situations. The other guard, Tony Ritchie, was younger and more aggressive in his approach. He carried himself with a sense of entitlement, as though his position gave him the right to treat people however he saw fit. Together they walked down the aisle with purpose, their eyes darting from face to face, looking for something or someone out of place. When they reached the section where Diana sat, Chuck nudged Tony and muttered under his breath, gesturing toward Diana. "Look at that," he said. "Someone's playing dress-up today." Tony squinted at Diana's uniform, and a look of disdain spread across his face. "Are you kidding me? That's obviously fake. Look at all those ribbons. Like anyone would believe a woman earned all that." Diana heard the words, but she didn't respond. She remained seated, keeping her attention on the stage. She had earned every ribbon, every medal, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. But the guards weren't done yet. They exchanged glances before making their move. Diana knew something was about to happen, and she steeled herself for whatever came next. As the guards drew closer, Diana remained calm. She had been in more stressful situations than this, but something about the way these men approached her felt different. They had already made assumptions about her, and their treatment of her was escalating. She could feel the eyes of the crowd turning toward her, a sense of discomfort slowly building as the interaction unfolded. Chuck cleared his throat loudly as he approached Diana's seat. He stood in front of her, blocking her view of the stage. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with an edge in his voice, "but we need to see some identification. There have been reports of unauthorized personnel in the area." Diana looked up at him, meeting his gaze with a steady, unflinching stare. Her hands rested calmly in her lap, and her posture remained rigid, every inch the military officer. "I'm here for my son's graduation," she replied, her tone calm but firm. She had nothing to hide. She reached into her purse without hesitation and pulled out her military ID, handing it over to Chuck. Chuck took the ID, flipping it over in his hands, as if looking for a flaw. His eyes studied the card with suspicion, as though he expected to find some sign of forgery. Meanwhile, Tony stepped forward, crossing his arms over his chest. His expression was one of contempt. His eyes narrowed as he continued to scrutinize Diana's uniform. "These ribbons look suspicious," Tony said, his voice dripping with doubt. "And this rank, Major?" "Come on, lady, we weren't born yesterday." Diana's gaze remained steady, unaffected by Tony's words. She had been through far worse in her career, and this wasn't going to rattle her. But she could feel the heat rising in the room, the murmur of whispers surrounding them. People were starting to notice the exchange, and their curiosity was growing. "My identification is legitimate," Diana said calmly, extending her hand for the return of her ID. "I am Major Diana Johnson, and I have every right to be here." Chuck paused for a moment, glancing at the ID again, clearly searching for something to challenge. The moments stretched on, tension building. He finally handed her ID back with a reluctance that spoke volumes. Tony, however, wasn't ready to let it go. He scoffed dismissively. "Right, and I'm General Patton," he sneered, waving his hand. "Look, we don't know where you got this costume, but military impersonation is a federal crime. We're just trying to be nice about this." Diana's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady and calm. "I suggest you contact your supervisor. There seems to be a misunderstanding here." Chuck reluctantly handed the ID back. "No misunderstanding, ma'am. We know what we're looking at. This is a legitimate military ceremony, not some costume party. Maybe you should consider leaving before this becomes more embarrassing for everyone involved." The situation was quickly escalating. Diana could feel the eyes of the crowd shifting, the whispers turning louder as people began to realize what was happening. She could hear the voices of those around her, some questioning the guards' treatment of her, others wondering what was going on. Diana knew she couldn't just sit back and let this go unchecked. She had worked too hard, made too many sacrifices to let anyone undermine her or her service. As the tension in the room grew, the announcement that the ceremony was about to begin seemed to embolden the guards. Chuck took a step closer to Diana, his tone becoming more aggressive. "All right, playtime's over," he said with a sneer. "You've had your fun, but now you need to leave. These families deserve to enjoy this ceremony without distractions." Diana remained poised and composed, her military training kicking in. Her hands were clasped behind her back in parade rest, a posture that anyone with military experience would recognize. "I'm not causing any distraction," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "I'm simply sitting here, waiting to watch my son graduate." Tony gestured at her uniform. "This whole charade is a distraction. Look around. People are staring, whispering, taking pictures. You're turning this into a circus." Diana knew the situation had grown bigger than just her and the guards. It had become a spectacle. The crowd's attention was fully on them now, and Diana could feel the growing weight of their gaze. She could hear the voices of families debating what was happening. Some were confused, unsure whether to believe the guards or to trust what they saw before them. Others were beginning to question the treatment of a decorated veteran. "I think she looks legitimate," an elderly man murmured to his wife. "Those medals look real to me." His wife shook her head uncertainly. "I don't know, Harold. Would they really ask her to leave if she belonged here?" A younger woman, holding a toddler in her arms, pulled out her phone and began recording. "This is crazy," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "They're harassing a veteran at a military graduation." Chuck immediately turned toward the woman with the phone, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to put that phone away. This is a private matter." "Private?" the woman shot back. "You're making a public scene and embarrassing this service member. People should see how you're treating her." Tony's patience was running thin. He turned back to Diana, his voice growing more forceful. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. Either you leave voluntarily, or we'll have you escorted out." Diana stood her ground, her posture still as military perfect as ever. Her voice was unwavering as she spoke. "And exactly who would escort me out?" Chuck puffed out his chest. "We would. We have the authority to remove disruptive individuals from this premises." "I see," Diana said calmly, her voice carrying a hint of steel. "And what gives you the authority to remove a United States Army major from a military ceremony?" Tony scoffed again. "There you go with the major thing again. Lady, give it up. Whatever you bought that costume for, it wasn't worth it." A voice cut through the tension, a voice that held the weight of authority. "What's going on here?" A man in civilian clothes, but with unmistakable military bearing, approached the scene. His gray hair and weathered face spoke of years of service. His eyes quickly assessed the situation, taking in the tension in the air and the confused looks from the crowd. The man walked forward with purpose, his steps measured and precise. Chuck immediately adopted a more professional tone. "Sir, we're dealing with an individual who's impersonating military personnel. We're just trying to resolve this quietly." The man's eyes flicked over to Diana, scanning her uniform in a way that the guards had failed to. His gaze sharpened as he noted the specific ribbons, the sharpness of her uniform, the careful attention to detail that couldn't be faked. His expression shifted from curiosity to recognition. "What's your name, soldier?" the man asked, his voice firm and respectful. Diana met his gaze without hesitation. "Major Diana Johnson, sir." The man's face went pale as recognition dawned on him. He stepped closer, his eyes widening as he saw the full scope of Diana's decorations. Among her ribbons was the Silver Star, one of the military's highest honors. "Dear God," he whispered before speaking louder, "you're Major Diana Fortress Johnson, the Diana Johnson who saved 37 soldiers in Kandahar." A hush fell over the crowd as the man's words echoed through the gymnasium. The guards exchanged uncertain glances, their confidence beginning to waver. Chuck was the first to react, his voice barely a whisper. "Ma'am, we didn't know." As the crowd's murmurs grew, Master Sergeant Rodriguez stepped forward, recognizing Major Diana Johnson with respect. "Major Diana Fortress Johnson," he called, "the Diana Johnson who saved 37 soldiers in Kandahar." The gymnasium went silent as the realization set in. The two guards, Chuck and Tony, stood frozen. Their earlier assumptions now seemed foolish, as the weight of Diana's service began to sink in. Rodriguez continued, "She's a genuine American hero, single-handedly holding off enemy fire to evacuate wounded soldiers under impossible conditions." The surrounding crowd, once filled with confusion and whispers, now understood. Diana's ribbons, her medals, her military bearing were no longer in question. She was a decorated officer, and it was clear that her presence wasn't just a privilege. It was an honor for everyone present. Chuck, finally shaken, muttered, "We made a mistake," his face pale with regret. Tony, his bravado gone, stepped forward and admitted, "There's no excuse for how we treated you." Diana nodded calmly. "The important thing is learning from this experience." The situation turned when the unmistakable sound of marching footsteps echoed through the gymnasium. 12 Navy SEALs entered in perfect formation, their presence commanding immediate attention. At the front was Commander Marcus Steele Thompson, who spoke with authority. "We're here to honor Major Johnson." The SEALs formed a respectful semicircle around Diana, signaling her importance and placing the final stamp of authenticity on her presence. Chuck and Tony's previous doubts were gone, replaced by deep remorse. Rodriguez addressed the crowd. "Major Johnson saved lives in Kandahar, and she deserves our respect." The gymnasium erupted in applause, not just for the heroism she had shown, but for the dignity and grace with which she handled the situation. Chuck, now fully aware of his mistake, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we owe you an apology. We didn't understand." Diana accepted it gracefully, her calm response a lesson in respect. "The important thing is learning from this," she said. As the SEALs escorted Diana to the front row, the crowd stood in silent respect. What had started as a confrontation became a powerful moment of realization for everyone present. The graduation ceremony continued, but the lesson lingered in the air. Heroes come in many forms, and respect must always precede assumption.